get it in my mind to grab the camera and show you a little bit of what's happening. I'm not a real good content creator. I just do what I do, and I like to sometimes share. So here I had bought a package of chicken drumsticks that had the bone and the skin on, and it's just your old-fashioned way of frying chicken. I took some flour, some seasonings, mixed it together, and rolled the chicken in it. I fried it in, I've got some butter and some olive oil, and I normally don't use this big pan. I like to use my cast iron, but my stove is out right now and I needed a bigger pan to get this job going, and so I am using this one. And what I'll do next will be to finish browning the chicken, take it all out of that fry pan, put it into here, and then I will take a little bit of this flour and stir that into my grease, my drippings that are left in this frying pan that you can see around here. And I'll brown that, and then at that time I will start to add some milk, and that's going to thicken that milk and make a really good milk gravy. Cowboy's going to love that on some bread. And so I just thought I would share this. If you've never done the old-fashioned way of making gravy or frying chicken rolled in flour, that's what I'm doing here. So I'll come back when I'm ready to make the gravy and show you that. So while the chicken is frying, I thought I'd show you my soap is really curing nice. It's really looking good. Here I have made some more fire cider. I've got 2 more gallons going with the vinegar with the mother in. I've got jalapenos, onions, garlic, orange, lemon, some thyme, some rosemary, some turmeric, parsley, peppercorns. And so I've got 2 more half gallons brewing. This will not be ready for 6 weeks, and then I'll strain it and we'll add the honey and it'll be ready to go. I've been using quite a little of my first batch as well as my elderberry syrup, and I'll show you that next. Here's my fire cider that I've been working on daily, and our elderberry syrup. Knock on wood, we've been staying very healthy on the homestead, and I think a lot of it is we don't go a lot of places when it's time for the flu bugs to be running rampant. We try to stay home as much as possible. There's always times you have to get out, but I also think that my tea cupboard with all the medicinal teas really help too. I use the teas a lot. I make us a pitcher full of tea and we sip on that. Here I've got some dandelion leaves soaking in oil to make a tincture, to make a salve, healing salves. And here's another one with plantain, and it's soaking in the oil, and that's going to set 6-8 weeks too before I make any salve out of that. So one thing I did do this week was at 7 days on my first jar of kombucha, tested it. We both liked it at that stage, so I went ahead and bottled it up, and we've been drinking that. And I started my second batch of kombucha, and I think this is something that we're really gonna like. I see my scobies are growing. I've got the little one underneath, and that I started with, I'm assuming, and this is the new SCOBY growing here. So I think I've got the first fermentation figured out and how to make that, but I don't know that I'll even try the flavored yet. I really like it the way it is so far, so we're going to just leave it at that. So here we've got all the chicken fried. It's been floured, seasoned, and fried in some butter, some oil, and I'm going to take some of this flour, We'll start with that much. I think that'll be plenty. And my burner is on low right now. And I'm going to stir this grease into the flour. And all that stuff that you normally dump out is good flavoring. And that's the good start of your milk gravy. I'm going to let that just bubble a little bit while I stir it, and I'll be back. So this looks like my gravy's done. I added a little more milk and a little more salt and pepper. And it's nice and thick. It'll be really tasty on some bread later with a piece of chicken. So I'm going to let this just simmer a little bit on low. Keep stirring it and watch it a little bit just so those flavors really incorporate together. The chicken oven is warm now, so the chicken can go into my oven. I'm going to put it on 300 degrees for a while and let it bake in the oven for a little while so it gets cooked through to the bone. And I think Cowboy's going to be pretty happy later. Well, I've been busy dehydrating. I think I had maybe 1 or 2 grapefruits and another couple lemons. And they're almost dry. There's just a few of the bigger ones I think need to set just a little bit longer in this wood heat. Right now my stove is not going. We are almost 50 degrees here in Montana, and it's just too hot to have the wood stove going. So it's went out, but I did earlier make me hot tea from my tea cupboard, an herbal medicinal mixture. I've got one of my lemons from the top that you just saw. I've got a cinnamon stick, a couple of cloves. I've got some eucalyptus leaves, some echinacea leaves, some oregano, dandelion leaf. What else did I put in there? And anyway, Cowboy and I had both had a cup of hot tea from that, and I still got some left. So after frying the chicken and keeping the house nice and warm from the oven, I decided to go ahead and use the rest of this and pour over some ice. And I'll finish drinking this tea, and it looks like it's going to be just the right amount. That's pretty cool. And that's going to taste good. So don't waste your old tea. Just drink it cold or warm it up. Well, folks, it's time for a sit-down chat here on the Homestead. If you've been watching lately, there's a lot coming out. Finally, it's taken them several weeks to get out what people have needed to be hearing several weeks ago. If you've not watched and kept up with news and what's happening in China, in Iran, in South Korea, and Hong Kong, and a whole lot of other countries, and the U.S., you are missing a window of opportunity to prepare to take care of yourselves. This is just something here on the Homestead that we normally do on a regular basis just because we've lived the life all of our life. Even as we were kids growing up, our folks did this, our grandparents. But when they had the tough times, like my grandparents in the dirty 30s, in the Depression time, it was very hard for them to survive, but they were survivors. They knew what it took to survive and feed their family, and it was hard. It was rough. And there's nothing saying that eventually history does repeat itself. I don't care what it is, if it's your clothes, your hair, your glasses, your food, just in general, it eventually comes around. And I think people need to wake up and take this little window that's left of opportunity to get yourself some preps. And if this thing doesn't turn out to what they think could happen, and very good reason to think it could happen, you are one step ahead to having your shelves prepped and ready for whatever is ahead. Whether it's a hurricane, whether it's a flood, whether it's a fire around you and you can't get out, or a sickness or a loss of a job. Prepping, I don't care where you live, an apartment, in a rented house, on your own place, in the mountains, prepping is something everyone needs to do and learn how to do. This world anymore relies so much on convenience. We're spoiled people. We're very spoiled. It's a technology world. And if that technology were taken, if the food stopped coming to the store, how would you handle it? Are you going to be okay? Are you going to be able to feed your kids? Are you going to be able to feed your family? These are things that right now everyone needs to consider and sit and think on a little bit. It's the what ifs. What if it does get as bad as it could and has across the oceans? And it's here. It's on our land. It's on the U.S. soil. They're downplaying it a lot. I feel they are not letting it out. Well, they haven't let it out until yesterday when the CDC finally had a talk on the TV. Up until then, it's very hush, and it's still going to be hush. It's going to be mashed. It's not going to be anything. They can handle it. There's no problem, no issues. I beg to differ. I think it's more than most can handle. You start getting a lot of really, really sick folks at the hospitals. Your workers, your doctors, your nurses, they're going to be so overwhelmed. They're going to be getting sick. They're going to want to be at home with their families in a pandemic, if that's what we're headed toward, and the word has been used. So, folks, I feel in my heart that I have had to speak up this week and voice my thoughts, my opinions here on our homestead. What we do here is just what we do all the time. That's our main concern, is taking care of ourselves and not waiting for somebody else to take care of us. So that is why we grow a garden. That is why we can and preserve. That's why we dehydrate. That's why I've gotten an herbal, medicinal tea cupboard going. I am making fire cider. I am making elderberry syrup. We're drinking that. We're drinking the teas. I have stocked up on food. I've used money that I had sold a little shed, and I could have used the shed, but I needed the cash at the time, and I used that money to go buy canning jars. And when I buy canning jars, I always buy more seals every time. Every time I buy a box of canning jars with the lids, I will pick up 2-3 more boxes of seals, just so that when those jars are empty, I have seals ready to go and put whatever kind of food I can put together, whether it's soup or chilies or broth or meats or fruits, whatever. And I try to keep our pantry stocked as well as store-bought. We buy a lot of still store-bought. We're not self-sufficient here. So if the stores were to go empty, there are things I won't be able to get. And so I do stock up on all of our basics. Like flour now, I do buy several bags at a time, but I'm constantly rotating and using that flour. I do have extra buckets of wheat berries and a hand grinder on the back burner if needed. Another thing on the back burner that I've got, and I've tried them enough that I know what they're like, and I really did like them. It was freeze-dried foods through the Thrive food freeze-dried, excuse me, I couldn't think of the word. And I've used those in soups, and actually the fruits are so good you can just snack on them out of the can. But I do have several number 10 cans on the back shelf for my long-term storage. If I start running out of my canned stuff that I've put up or the canned stuff that I've bought from the store. And I have to tell you, the last 2 weeks, I have put out a lot extra more money, dollars worth, in supplies for us. Whether it be food or canning supplies, teas, or medical first aid type items, some books with some knowledge in. If I never have this internet thing in front of me, I am constantly and have been constantly working at preparing for whatever disasters come our way. Hopefully nothing ever, but it happens. It happens. And I would lots rather be well prepared as much as possible for a while anyway than to have, you know what, hit the fan and everybody panic at the same time and start going to the stores and grabbing things. And I've got to answer my phone. I'll be back soon. Sorry about that. That's just the life on the homestead. And I don't edit because I really don't know how to edit. And I just feel I don't have the extra time of the day to really edit. So I'm not a content creator. You're just getting the real deal here. You're getting life as it is on the homestead from Cowboy and I. So if you don't like that kind of a video, mine might not be for you. But anyway, I wanted to keep talking about our preps. And another thing that is very important is being able to have a water supply. Now, we have our own well, we have a generator, and we always try to keep a certain amount of fuel on hand to run our generator, our wood splitter, and chainsaws. And we need to keep on hand the oil that we need. So that's another prep we always do for our homestead. It's just one we always do. It doesn't matter if there's a crisis ahead of us or what. We just always try to do that. But the water source is another thing to look at. We had recently picked up what they call Alexa Pure, and it's a filtration, purification setup for water. And you can, I haven't set it up because it's on my back burner, but I've got it. You can even take water out of a river or a creek and purify that water so that you can have water. Folks, we can't survive without water. 3 days is you're really pushing it if you can't have water for your body. Water and food. You really need to sit back right now and get some priorities straight and start acting and doing and prepping. And preppers have gotten a bad rap. They and it's wrong because all we are trying to do is take care of ourselves so that nobody else has to. If you're the kind that thinks, oh, if something happens, they'll take care of us, I feel for you, because that's not the way it works. You'll see. You'll see. Have you noticed those people after a hurricane or a disaster of any kind, flooding, and their stores are wiped out, their fuel stations are so busy, people are standing in line holding a jug for hours and hours in the grocery stores waiting to get rationed out food, rationed out fuel. Well, if you like that kind of a setup, then, that's fine. Don't do anything. But if you're like us here on our homestead, if something happens, whatever it be, we want to be as most comfortable and relaxed as possible and just hunker down here and stay put and survive easily. Um, I highly suggest, if you're not a cooker, baker, home cooker, I want to say, and you only rely on fast food and pre-made stuff, I would start changing your train of thought somewhat. If you rely on the grocery store every day or a restaurant every day, you really need to change your train of thought. Um, if not, you're going to really wish you did. And us here, we like a variety. They talk about just stocking up your beans and rice and pasta. That's great. You need to. But if that's all you're throwing on your shelf, thinking, I'll be fine, you're going to get sick of those three things really fast, really quick. So buy up stuff that you can mix with it to change out a meal. There's all kinds of canned meats. If you do not do your home canning, you can buy canned beef, you can buy canned chicken, you can buy Spam. And I'm not a Spam crazy person, but I was raised on it, and it is good if you're hungry, and it's sliced and it's fried in a pan, and it's wrapped around, you wrap some bread around it, or you can cut it up in some eggs with some potatoes. There's lots of things you can do with the canned meats, even if you're not a fan of them right now. Get some on your back burner. And I would start with, at least, if you have not prepped it all, and this is going to get overwhelming for you the more you're hearing in the next weeks here ahead, start with 1 week at a time. Go over what you have at home. Do an inventory. How many people are in your family, or how many rely on you to feed them? And then you look at what you've got on hand. Don't think about going to the store, because just what if the store is empty? How long and how many good meals could you make for your family to eat on with what you have? And I would work off of that. I would start adding every week as much as possible. You may have to not go to the movies or get your nails done or go to the bar for a beer, or buy those cigarettes. What's more important? What is more important? If an emergency happens, can you feed your family or whoever is in your home? There's lots of ways that you can work at that. If you've got items to sell to make a little money, maybe you've got you could pick up some extra job to make a little more cash. There's lots of ways. If it's a priority, you're going to find a way. Because if it's not something like that, and it's something that you're really wanting, you're going to find a way to get it some way, somehow. So I suggest you could really consider it. Think about what if there's no food in the stores? I like to have things on my shelf. I've come from a long school of ranchers, farmers, and when I was a teenager, just had my driver's license, I was the main grocery shopper for my mom. She would give me a check signed. She would give me a list, and it was usually a pretty big list every week, like a couple carts full. But she had lots of mouths to feed, and she never knew when extra were going to be showing up. And that was their main priority, was to make sure we had lots of good food. And so I learned then what it was like to stock up. And through my whole life of being a mom and a grandma now, I still do that kind of shopping and stocking up. I always have. It's very important. There's other things that get let go. I might go to the Goodwill to buy a shirt where I will save that 40, 50, 60 bucks for one shirt, put that money towards food or a prep or medical first aid type or canning supplies. Um, it's something that you really want to sit down and take a note on. And I've got a little bit of a list of things that we do, because I've had so many on my Prairie Girl Farm page on Facebook asking and wondering how and what's on the list. And so pop over to that page. It's called Prairie Girl Farm there, and join us. There's a lot going on there right now, and several times a day I get on, and we're trying to get through this, and we're trying to make this more aware before the panic hits. We don't want anybody panicking. We don't want fear. We don't want you anxious, but we want you prepared. We do not want somebody left out with kids at home with no food and no way to prepare food, and you don't know. So anyway, quick list, and I'm just going to read them off. I don't want my video too long. Of course, your sugars, whether it's regular sugar, organic sugar, powdered sugar, brown sugars, flour. Even if you're not a baker, I would suggest having flour or the wheat berries with a grinder, because eventually you're going to want a piece of bread. What if you can't buy bread? You better learn how to bake bread now. Don't wait. Practice. Some weekend try making homemade bread. So you're going to need yeast. Get the bigger package. Use what you want for practicing your bread. Freeze the rest. It will keep. It will be fine in your freezer. You've always got some yeast, and you'll always have some bread. If you've got space in your freezer, throw a bag or two extra of flour in your freezer to keep long term. I don't have that much space, so I'm always buying several bags of flour at a time, and I just rotate and keep using it up. So teas, if you're a tea drinker, by all means, stock up on your tea or your coffees. And like they said before, rice, pasta, beans, and you can buy those in the bags or you can buy it in cans. The beans and the rice, or the beans and the pasta. The pasta and the rice will store indefinitely too. So you're good to go either way. But if you like them for the convenience, you can have them in cans on your shelf, is what I was trying to say. And oatmeal, we go through oatmeal, whether it's breakfast oatmeal or if it's in protein bites or cookies or a pancake. Oatmeal is a good thing to have on hand. I'm going to pop back to the rice for a minute. There's different ways you can cook your rice. You can make a kettle of rice, plain rice. You can take that hot rice and add sugar, raisins, and milk and make it a hot cereal. You can make that rice plain with butter and salt and pepper. You can add some cheese. You can make it with fried meat and heat it up in a pan, or with veggies, or with eggs for fried rice. There's so many things, but think of those extra ingredients that you need on hand to change up your meals if that's all you've got to eat. Okay, another good one is your peanut butter and jelly. And if you buy one, buy two. Put one on your shelf. When you take that second one off the shelf, put two more on there. Make sure you've always got peanut butter and jelly, crackers. It goes over pretty good. We like the raisins in our oatmeal, cookies, whatever, so I always stock up on raisins and craisins. Here's a big one, folks. If you've never thought of it, cases of canned milk, evaporated milk. That will be a big addition to your prepping, your stocking up. Canned milk can get you through a lot of troubles. Canned milk will make gravy. It'll make cream soups. It will make, you can put it right on your oatmeal, which we love. We'd rather open a can of evaporated milk for our hot oatmeal. It's so good. And if you run out of baby formula, you could make it work. It might not be perfect, but you could make it work. There's so many things. If you've got kids at home and you've run out of milk in your refrigerator, you could maybe dilute it just a little bit. Have some Nestle's Quick on hand. Stir that in to flavor it up a little bit. And if they've been out of milk, they're gonna think it's all right. So canned milk and powdered milk on the back burner too is really a good one. You can do lots with that, but I prefer the canned milk over the powdered milk. Powdered milk I use to make my hot cocoa mixes. Stock up on your canned veggies, on your canned fruits. Stock up on those. Those are going to be some of your main ingredients if you need to put meals together, whether it's soups, casseroles, whatever. You're going to need those ingredients. And the fruit's just good for your body. If somebody's having trouble, give them some fruit. You know what I mean is. But you need a variety. You need that pyramid that they've always taught us. You need a variety of food. You do not want just meat. You do not want just rice or beans. You need everything. You need proteins. Honey, very important. Honey is a good one. You can use it to replace any sugar. And it's probably one of your higher priced preps, but it's definitely a much needed one. It's good in your honey or your honey in your teas, making protein bites, replacing it for sugar, like even in your bread that you're mixing up. It's very good. So definitely put that on your list. Excuse me. Your baking supplies, your baking soda, baking powder, the baking cocoa, vanilla, salts. Salts is a big one. Lots of salts, from your canning salts to your regular salt you use on your table to maybe some ice cream salt if you make ice cream at all. If you got an ice cream maker, that would really be a treat for some eventually. And for curing, if you want to cure some meat. Here we do not raise pork, but in times of being tough, we could harvest a deer, or we could take a goat and use our seasonings and our grinder and make patties, sausage patties. Might not be as good as pork sausage, but it's going to be a good breakfast sausage. So have your seasonings, your spices on hand. Those canned meats we talked about, the chicken, the beef, the Spam, put those on your list. And maybe if you don't use them on a regular basis, which I don't either, but try to incorporate some of that meat maybe once a month into your meal preps so your family gets used to that taste and what it is. And then always have a stock. Tuna fish sandwiches, or mix with some hard-boiled eggs, or make your casserole. You've got some more meals with your noodles. And have your cream soups on hand. I'm not a crazy one for having a lot of that, but I still use it at certain times. If I'm lazy and not wanting to mix up my roux and I don't have the extra milk, whatever, I'll throw in a can of cream soup. We hardly ever eat just Campbell's soup. There's been times I've bought like, let's say if somebody's sick with a cold, I've got extra chicken noodle soup on my shelf. I might have broth, which is another one, big item. Put beef and chicken broth on your list right now. Add that to your chicken noodle soup. You can add more noodles. You could add a can of your green beans. You could add a can of corn. You could boil potatoes in that. You could make you a heartier home-cooked soup with a little bit of that, or add some canned tomato chunks. You can change up a canned soup to make it more of a home-cooked soup, and a bigger pot with all your other canned veggies and broths and tomatoes on hand. And if you've got to stock up a cool room or a pantry or a root cellar where you can have potatoes and carrots and onions and all that kind of stuff from your garden, or you just don't have a garden and you buy from a farmer's market in the summertime, find you a cool space in your house to have that fresh stuff always on hand. It's good for you. One thing Cowboy and I really like here is a Krusty's pancake. So I keep pancake mix on hand. Sometimes I mix it up ourselves, but we do like the Krusty's. And I always get the real maple syrup. I just have that on hand. If you have certain drinks your family likes, I would always keep a stock of those, whether it be even packages of Kool-Aid or lemonade or Tang. That would really change up some water. Here on the homestead, I'm learning to make kombucha, which we're really liking, as well as haymakers punch. I'm experimenting with different ways that I can do different things on the homestead and have a variety. Okay, don't forget the broth, though. I've got that down here. Crackers, another good thing. If you like to buy in bulk, go ahead and take some of those crackers and put them in a jar. And if you have a food saver with an adapter for your jar, you can food save those crackers in those jars and they'll keep longer. Just another little tip. Salts and peppers. We talked about salt earlier, but salt, pepper, seasoning, spices. Go through spices that you use a lot, and keep your supply full. We're not big ketchup eaters, but once in a while I use it, on meatloaf or baked beans, something. So I try to keep a little ketchup. We do use mayo, and I do not make my own mayo at this point. I could, and I probably will down the road. But we use mayo. I like to have pickles on hand. Another thing are taco shells. I like to have some of those on hand a lot of the time. You can change them up and make different meals with that. Now here are some other items that are not food, but things that you should have on your list and start working towards getting more of. Garbage bags, dish soap, laundry soap. Big one is toilet paper. Paper towels are going to come in handy. I have several packages of toilet paper, but every time I go to the store, I still throw on at least one in my cart. I keep that stock where it's at. I keep a full stock. I don't think I have enough for a year, but I'm pretty close to half a year anyway. But I do try to keep up with that. If you got a freezer, you can freeze extra cheese, especially your shredded cheese works good. Freeze extra butter. And with the butter, you've got your lards, you have your Criscos, your oils. Make sure you've got a stash of those, but rotate those so they don't get old on you. But that's another thing to have on hand. Make sure you've got that on your list. You can freeze milk. We don't care to freeze milk, but you can. So you've always got it to take out. Breads. You can freeze loaves of bread in the freezer really easy. And then have a stash maybe of frozen veggies in there. And we always have our fresh potatoes, carrots, onions, celery, that type of thing on hand in our root cellar. Eggs. We have our chickens, so we do have our own eggs. But we could also eat those chickens if we had to, too. They're dual purpose. Actually, I should say 3 purposes. We've got fertilizer for the garden to grow these veggies. And another thing don't forget is your cleaning supplies. You're going to want to have some bleach on hand, as well as have a box of gloves, plastic gloves. You can use them for so many things, whether you're cutting up jalapeno peppers, cleaning your coop, or if you have somebody that's sick, you've got gloves. Get some gloves. Masks, same thing, although they are probably hard to get a hold of right now. I don't know how well that is. I got mine earlier on. Hand sanitizers, I'd have those on hand. Lighting, like my lamp back here. Have some backup lighting, lamps, oils, wicks, batteries for your flashlights, candles, matches, or Bic lighters. Put those on your list. Don't forget them. Very important. And be thinking of a backup of heat that's not electrical. All power goes out. It's in the middle of the winter. Your propane's empty. What are you going to do? I would at least be watching the sales and like a garage sale, whatever. And I would eventually put my money into some type of wood stove, whether it's a cook stove, a little trash burner, a little wood stove, just a normal one, and have some pipe on hand, even if you do not get it into your house right away. I would be working towards getting it in to somewhere, whether it's out in your shop, whether it's in your porch, in your kitchen, in your house, living room. Eventually work on a backup heat, and wood heat is a very good backup. You can warm yourself, you can keep your house from freezing, you can keep your family from freezing, you can cook on it. Think of it, folks. If you're in an area where you don't need that wood heat, you'll be fine. But up here in the north, we need the heat. I would invest in a dehydrator, canners, water bath, pressure canner, dehydrator, I guess I said that. And I would do a little bit of canning, even if you've not done it. I would learn how to do it. Even if you're buying veggies from a farmer's market, practice. Take a weekend sometime and do some of these lost ways that you may have to eventually bring back into your life. And if not you, your kids. It's still ways that I think are very important to pass down to your kids, to the grandkids, so that they know. Because when the folks that are older than myself and Cowboy are gone, that is some really lost knowledge there, folks. It's a sad time. When they're gone, there's a lot of knowledge that's going to be gone with them that they can tell us and show us how to survive. So even if it's not something you want to incorporate in your life on a daily basis, totally understand that. I would still strive to learn how to read, to have the books, to know, to have the supplies. So if you ever have to, and you teach your kids while they're young, they're still going to have that knowledge when they get older, that if they're in a tough time, they're going to say, my mother or my grandmother did this. I can do this to survive. Keep that in your thoughts. Another thing I always keep on hand too is extra Listerine, toothpaste. Rubbing alcohol is a good one, and sterilized water. I've got a couple of bottles of that is all, but I have some just in case of an emergency. You've got your bandages, first aid stuff, Neosporin, the antibiotic creams. Cowboy goes through Tums, so we've got Tums on the back burner. We've got peroxide, razors, shampoos, conditioners, lotions, soaps. And this is all stuff that we still, if we've got a hard time ahead of us, and we don't know where this is going with this virus, we want to be comfortable. We want to be comfortable. We don't want to be without as much as possible. Another thing I did buy was, yesterday was a big plastic sheeting, roll of that, and some gray tape. Now that plastic sheeting can be used for a hot box too, if I want to make a little makeshift greenhouse in the spring to start some lettuce and radishes, whatever, a little bit early. I've got a roll of plastic. But it can also be to quarantine somebody if they're really sick. And don't think that it would never happen, because it does happen. When I was little and I had a baby brother, we all ended up with whooping cough. Well, my mom and dad had to isolate that new baby brother in a bedroom with plastic over his crib and masks, gloves. They had to do it all to try to keep this baby well. I think he did have it, but they were trying to get him well. Um, and we all had it. The older kids had it too. So don't think that something isn't going to happen. It can happen. It's just a timer you hear. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it's just a timer. Uh, where else can we go with this? We really like the essential oils, or I do. Cowboy skin is a little more sensitive, but there's so much healing properties in essential oils that they're a good thing to have on hand. We'll go through those maybe someday on how I use them. Oregano, and I'll give you a quick list of just the favorites that I use. Oregano, peppermint, frankincense. We've got some myrrh, eucalyptus, on guard, which is a thieves or yes, thieves on another oil type. You can get your maluka. Those are some good oils to have on hand, and they do help. And there are lots of ways you can have pain relievers for joints, using more natural products, but have your pain relievers on hand. Excuse me. If you use them, I definitely have some on hand. So I'm going to leave this at this. There's lots to think about. I don't want fear in people, and you don't want to panic. But use this little opportunity time, this little window that is closing in. And I've been watching it for a good 6 weeks, and I can't believe that they've waited this long to let a little bit out, where they needed to be really telling folks. But they don't want to cause fear and panic. And I understand that, because I know when it does hit the panic, things are going to happen. Stores are going to be empty. You're not going to be able to get product. For when I first ordered my masks, and that was offline on Amazon 6 weeks ago, some of them then were out of stock. And I've heard, I haven't got on there lately, but it sounds like a lot of them are out of stock. What's there, had the prices gone up? Well, I feel that's what's going to happen in your stores too, because not all alone are we going through the solar minimum for growing our food, the extremes of weather, and not just the virus that's going around, but we have some food shortages ahead. So what you can start preparing, I highly advise, start now and take it serious. Make it a priority. Get her done, folks. Any questions, leave me a comment below. We'll do some more videos later. Gotta go. My timer went off. And God bless. Thanks for stopping by the homestead. We appreciate it. Don't live in fear. Don't live in fear. Be happy, be content, but be smart, be using some common sense. That's all I ask. I'd hate to see anybody caught unaware, and I know there's a lot of folks out there that haven't a clue what's even been going on so far, and it's sad because it's going to be a shock and a panic to them, and I hate to see that happening. So take care, folks. God bless. We love you.